Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 1 The First Step in God Realization Invocation. O my Lord, the all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Text 1, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, My dear King, your question is glorious because it is very beneficial to all kinds of people. The answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing, and it is approved by all transcendentalists. Text 2, Those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. Text 3, The lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime either in making money or maintaining family members. Text 4, Persons devoid of Atma Tattva do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. Text 5, O descendant of King Burda, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul, the controller and the savior from all miseries. Text 6, The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Text 7, O King Pariksit, mainly the topmost transcendentalists, who are above the regulative principles and restrictions, take pleasure in describing the glories of the Lord. Text 8, At the end of the Dvapara Yuga, I studied this great supplement of Vedic literature named Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, which is equal to all the Vedas, from my father, Srila Devapayana Vyasadeva. Text 9, O saintly king, I was certainly situated perfectly in transcendence, yet I was still attracted by the delineation of the pastimes of the Lord, who is described by enlightened verses. Text 10, That very Śrīmad Bhāgavatam I shall recite before you because you are the most sincere devotee of Lord Krishna. One who gives full attention and respect to hearing Śrīmad Bhāgavatam achieves unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord, the giver of salvation. Text 11, O King, constant chanting of the holy name of the Lord after the ways of the great authorities is the doubtless and fearless way of success for all, including those who are free from all material desires, those who are desirous of all material enjoyment, and also those who are self-satisfied by dint of transcendental knowledge. Text 12, What is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted, inexperienced by years in this world? Better a moment of full consciousness, because that gives one a start in searching after his supreme interest. Text 13, The saintly King Katvanga, after being informed that the duration of his life would be only a moment more, at once freed himself from all material activities and took shelter of the supreme safety, the personality of Godhead. Text 14, Maharaja Pariksit, now your duration of life is limited to 7 more days, so during this time you can perform all those rituals which are needed for the best purpose of your next life. Text 15, At the last stage of one's life, one should be bold enough not to be afraid of death. But one must cut off all attachment to the material body and everything pertaining to it and all desires thereof. Text 16, One should leave home and practice self-control. In a sacred place he should bathe regularly and sit down in a lonely place duly sanctified. Text 17, After sitting in the above manner, make the mind remember the 3 transcendental letters, AUM, and by regulating the breathing process, control the mind so as not to forget the transcendental seed. Text 18, Gradually, as the mind becomes progressively spiritualized, withdraw it from sense activities, and by intelligence the senses will be controlled. The mind too absorbed in material activities can be engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead and become fixed in full transcendental consciousness. Text 19, Thereafter, you should meditate upon the limbs of Vishnu, one after another, without being deviated from the conception of the complete body. Thus the mind becomes free from all sense objects. There should be no other thing to be thought upon. Because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu, is the ultimate truth, the mind becomes completely reconciled in him only. Text 20, One's mind is always agitated by the passionate mode of material nature and bewildered by the ignorant mode of nature. But one can rectify such conceptions by the relation of Vishnu and thus become pacified by cleansing the dirty things created by them. Text 21, O King, by this system of remembrance and by being fixed in the habit of seeing the all-good personal conception of the Lord, one can very soon attain devotional service to the Lord, under his direct shelter. Text 22, The fortunate King Pariksit, inquiring further, said, O Brahmana, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied and how the conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed. Text 23, Sukadeva Goswami answered, one should control the sitting posture, regulate the breathing process by the yogic pranayama and thus control the mind and senses and with intelligence apply the mind to the gross potencies of the Lord, called the Virat Rupa. Text 24, this gigantic manifestation of the phenomenal material world as a whole is the personal body of the Absolute Truth, wherein the universal resultant past, present and future of material time is experienced. Text 25, the gigantic universal form of the personality of Godhead, within the body of the universal shell, which is covered by sevenfold material elements, is the subject for the Virat conception. Text 26, persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Matala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatala planets. The ankles are the Mahatala planets, and his shanks constitute the Talatala planets. Text 27, the knees of the universal form are the planetary system of the name Sutala, and the two thighs are the Vitala and Atala planetary systems. The hips are Mahatala, and outer space is the depression of his navel. Text 28, the chest of the original personality of the gigantic form is the luminary planetary system, his neck is the Mahar planets, his mouth is the Janas planets, and his forehead is the Tapas planetary system. The topmost planetary system, known as Satyaloka, is the head of he who has 1,000 heads. Text 29, his arms are the demigods headed by Indra, the 10 directional sides are his ears, and physical sound is his sense of hearing. His nostrils are the 2 Asvini Kumaras, and material fragrance is his sense of smell. His mouth is the blazing fire. Text 30, the sphere of outer space constitutes his eye pits, and the eyeball is the sun is the power of seeing. His eyelids are both the day and night, and in the movements of his eyebrows, Brahma and similar supreme personalities reside. His palate is the director of water, Varuna, and the juice or essence of everything is his tongue. Text 31, they say that the Vedic hymns are the cerebral passage of the Lord, and his jaws of teeth are Yama, god of death, who punishes the sinners. The art of affection is his set of teeth, and the most alluring illusory material energy is his smile. This great ocean of material creation is but the casting of his glance over us. Text 32, modesty is the upper portion of his lips, hankering is his chin, religion is the breast of the Lord, and irreligion is his back. Brahmaji, who generates all living beings in the material world, is his genitals, and the Mitra Varunas are his 2 testicles. The ocean is his waist, and the hills and mountains are the stacks of his bones. Text 33, O king, the rivers are the veins of the gigantic body, the trees are the hairs of his body, and the omnipotent air is his breath. The passing ages are his movements, and his activities are the reactions of the 3 modes of material nature. Text 34, O best amongst the Kurus, the clouds which carry water are the hairs on his head, the terminations of days or nights are his dress, and the supreme cause of material creation is his intelligence. His mind is the moon, the reservoir of all changes. Text 35, the principle of matter, Mahatattva, is the consciousness of the omnipresent Lord, as asserted by the experts, and Rudradev is his ego. The horse, mule, camel and elephant are his nails, and wild animals and all quadrupeds are situated in the belt zone of the Lord. Text 36, varieties of birds are indications of his masterful artistic sense. Manu, the father of mankind, is the emblem of his standard intelligence, and humanity is his residence. The celestial species of human beings, like the Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Kuranas and angels, all represent his musical rhythm, and the demoniac soldiers are representations of his wonderful prowess. Text 37, the Virat Purusa's face is the Brahmanas, his arms are the Kshatriyas, his thighs are the Vaisyas, and the Sudras are under the protection of his feet. All the worshipable demigods are also overtaken by him, and it is the duty of everyone to perform sacrifices with feasible goods to appease the Lord. Text 38, I have thus explained to you the gross material gigantic conception of the personality of Godhead. One who seriously desires liberation concentrates his mind on this form of the Lord, because there is nothing more than this in the material world. Text 39, one should concentrate his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who alone distributes himself in so many manifestations just as ordinary persons create thousands of manifestations in dreams. One must concentrate the mind on him, the only all-blissful absolute truth. Otherwise one will be misled and will cause his own degradation. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 2 The Lord in the Heart Text 1, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, formerly, prior to the manifestation of the cosmos, Lord Brahma, by meditating on the Virat Rupa, regained his lost consciousness by appeasing the Lord. Thus he was able to rebuild the creation as it was before. Text 2, The way of presentation of the Vedic sounds is so bewildering that it directs the intelligence of the people to meaningless things like the heavenly kingdoms. The conditioned souls hover in dreams of such heavenly illusory pleasures, but actually they do not relish any tangible happiness in such places. Text 3. For this reason the enlightened person should endeavor only for the minimum necessities of life while in the world of names. He should be intelligently fixed and never endeavor for unwanted things, being competent to perceive practically that all such endeavors are merely hard labor for nothing. Text 4. When there are ample earthly flats to lie on, what is the necessity of cots and beds? When one can use his own arms, what is the necessity of a pillow? When one can use the palms of his hands, what is the necessity of varieties of utensils? When there is ample covering, or the skins of trees, what is the necessity of clothing? Text 5. Are there no torn clothes lying on the common road? Do the trees, which exist for maintaining others, no longer give alms in charity? Do the rivers, being dried up, no longer supply water to the thirsty? Are the caves of the mountains now closed? Or above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? Text 6. Thus being fixed, one must render service unto the supersoul situated in one's own heart by his omnipotency. Because he is the almighty personality of Godhead, eternal and unlimited, he is the ultimate goal of life, and by worshipping him one can end the cause of the conditioned state of existence. Text 7. Who else but the gross materialists will neglect such transcendental thought and take to the non-permanent names only, seeing the mass of people fallen in the river of suffering as the consequence of accruing the result of their own work? Text 8. Others conceive of the personality of Godhead residing within the body in the region of the heart and measuring only 8 inches, with 4 hands carrying a lotus, a wheel of a chariot, a conch shell and a club respectively. Text 9. His mouth expresses his happiness. His eyes spread like the petals of a lotus, and his garments, yellowish like the saffron of a cadamba flower, are bedecked with valuable jewels. His ornaments are all made of gold, set with jewels, and he wears a glowing headdress and earrings. Text 10. His lotus feet are placed over the whorls of the lotus like hearts of great mystics. On his chest is the Kaustuba jewel, engraved with a beautiful calf, and there are other jewels on his shoulders. His complete torso is garlanded with fresh flowers. Text 11. He is well decorated with an ornamental wreath about his waist and a ring studded with valuable jewels on his fingers. His leglets, his bangles, his oiled hair, curling with a bluish tint, and his beautiful smiling face are all very pleasing. Text 12. The Lord's magnanimous pastimes and the glowing glancing of his smiling face are all indications of his extensive benedictions. One must therefore concentrate on this transcendental form of the Lord, as long as the mind can be fixed on him by meditation. Text 13. The process of meditation should begin from the lotus feet of the Lord and progress to a smiling face. The meditation should be concentrated upon the lotus feet, then the calves, then the thighs, and in this way higher and higher. The more the mind becomes fixed upon the different parts of the limbs, one after another, the more the intelligence becomes purified. Text 14. Unless the gross materialist develops a sense of loving service unto the Supreme Lord, the seer of both the transcendental and material worlds, he should remember or meditate upon the universal form of the Lord at the end of his prescribed duties. Text 15. O King, whenever the yogi desires to leave this planet of human beings, he should not be perplexed about the proper time or place, but should comfortably sit without being disturbed and, regulating the life air, should control the senses by the mind. Text 16. Thereafter, the yogi should merge his mind, by his unalloyed intelligence, into the living entity, and then merge the living entity into the super-self. And by doing this, the fully satisfied living entity becomes situated in the supreme stage of satisfaction, so that he ceases from all other activities. Text 17. In that transcendental state of labdhapasanti, there is no supremacy of devastating time, which controls even the celestial demigods who are empowered to rule over mundane creatures. And what to speak of the demigods themselves? Nor is there the mode of material goodness, nor passion, nor ignorance, nor even the false ego, nor the material causal ocean, nor the material nature. Text 18. The transcendentalists desire to avoid everything godless, for they know that supreme situation in which everything is related with the Supreme Lord Vishnu. Therefore a pure devotee who is in absolute harmony with the Lord does not create perplexities, but worships the lotus feet of the Lord at every moment, taking them into his heart. Text 19. By the strength of scientific knowledge, one should be well situated in absolute realization and thus be able to extinguish all material desires. One should then give up the material body by blocking the air hole, through which stool is evacuated, with the heel of one's foot and by lifting the life air from one place to another in the 6 primary places. Text 20. The meditative devotee should slowly push up the life air from the navel to the heart, from there to the chest, and from there to the root of the palate. He should search out the proper places with intelligence. Text 21. Thereafter the bhakti yogi should push the life air up between the eyebrows, and then, blocking the 7 outlets of the life air, he should maintain his aim for going back home, back to Godhead. If he is completely free from all desires for material enjoyment, he should then reach the cerebral hole and give up his material connections, having gone to the Supreme. Text 22. However, O king, if a yogi maintains a desire for improved material enjoyments, like transference to the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, or the achievement of the eightfold perfections, travel in outer space with the Vayasas, or a situation in one of the millions of planets, then he has to take away with him the materially molded mind and senses. Text 23. The transcendentalists are concerned with the spiritual body. As such, by the strength of their devotional service, austerities, mystic power and transcendental knowledge, their movements are unrestricted, within and beyond the material worlds. The fruitive workers, or the gross materialists, can never move in such an unrestricted manner. Text 24. O king, when such a mystic passes over the Milky Way by the illuminating Sushumna to reach the highest planet, Brahmaloka, he goes first to Vaisvanara, the planet of the deity of fire, wherein he becomes completely cleansed of all contaminations, and thereafter he still goes higher, to the circle of Sisumara, to relate with Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. Text 25. This Sisumara is the pivot for the turning of the complete universe, and it is called the navel of Vishnu, Garbhodakasayi Vishnu. The yogi alone goes beyond this circle of Sisumara and attains the planet, Maharlika, where purified saints like Bhrigu enjoy a duration of life of 4,300,000,000 solar years. This planet is worshipable even for saints who are transcendentally situated. Text 26. At the time of the final devastation of the complete universe, the end of the duration of Brahma's life, a flame of fire emanates from the mouth of Ananta, from the bottom of the universe. The yogi sees all the planets of the universe burning to ashes, and thus he leaves for Satyaloka by airplanes used by the great purified souls. The duration of life in Satyaloka is calculated to be 15,480,000,000,000 years. Text 27. In that planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement, nor old age nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes, due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. Text 28. After reaching Satyaloka, the devotee is specifically able to be incorporated fearlessly by the subtle body in an identity similar to that of the gross body, and one after another he gradually attains stages of existence from earthly to watery, fiery, glowing and airy, until he reaches the ethereal stage. Text 29. The devotee thus surpasses the subtle objects of different senses like aroma by smelling, the palate by tasting, vision by seeing forms, touch by contacting, the vibrations of the ear by ethereal identification, and the sense organs by material activities. Text 30. The devotee, thus surpassing the gross and the subtle forms of coverings, enters the plane of egoism. And in that status he merges the material modes of nature, ignorance and passion, in this point of neutralization and thus reaches egoism and goodness. After this, all egoism is merged in the Mahatattva, and he comes to the point of pure self-realization. Text 31. Only the purified soul can attain the perfection of associating with the personality of Godhead in complete bliss and satisfaction in his constitutional state. Whoever is able to renovate such devotional perfection is never again attracted by this material world, and he never returns. Text 32. Your Majesty Maharaja Pariksit, know that all that I have described in reply to your proper inquiry is just according to the version of the Vedas, and it is eternal truth. This was described personally by Lord Krishna unto Brahma, with whom the Lord was satisfied upon being properly worshipped. Text 33. For those who are wandering in the material universe, there is no more auspicious means of deliverance than what is aimed at in the direct devotional service of Lord Krishna. Text 34. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is the highest perfection of religion. Text 35. The personality of Godhead Lord Sri Krishna is in every living being along with the individual soul. And this fact is perceived and hypothesized in our acts of seeing and taking help from the intelligence. Text 36. O King, it is therefore essential that every human being hear about, glorify and remember the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, always and everywhere. Text 37. Those who drink through oral reception, fully filled with the nectarian message of Lord Krishna, the beloved of the devotees, purify the polluted aim of life known as material enjoyment and thus go back to Godhead, to the lotus feet of Him, the personality of Godhead. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 3 Pure Devotional Service, The Change in Heart Text 1, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Maharaja Pariksit, as you have inquired from me as to the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you. Texts 2-7, one who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma or Brihaspati, the learned priest. One who desires powerful sex should worship the heavenly king, Indra, and one who desires good progeny should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world. One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire, and one who aspires only after money should worship the Visas. One should worship the Rudra incarnations of Lord Shiva if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grain should worship a deity. One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of a deity. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vasudeva, and one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Saja demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigods known as the Asvini Kumaras, and a person desiring a strongly built body should worship the earth. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet, and one who desires a good wife should worship the Asparas and the Urvasi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead, and one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be a greatly learned man he should worship Lord Shiva, and if one desires a good marital relation he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva. Text 8, one should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotee for spiritual advancement in knowledge, and for protection of heredity and advancement of a dynasty one should worship the various demigods. Text 9, one who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manas. One who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons, and one who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 10, a person who has broader intelligence, whether he be full of all material desire, without any material desire, or desiring liberation, must by all means worship the Supreme Whole, the Personality of Godhead. Text 11, all the different kinds of worshippers of multi-demigods can attain the highest perfectional benediction, which is spontaneous attraction unflinchingly fixed upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by the association of the pure devotee of the Lord. Text 12, transcendental knowledge in relation with the Supreme Lord Hari is knowledge resulting in the complete suspension of the waves and whirlpools of the material modes. Such knowledge is self-satisfying due to its being free from material attachment, and being transcendental it is approved by authorities. Who could fail to be attracted? Text 13, Saunaka said, the son of Vyasadeva, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, was a highly learned sage and was able to describe things in a poetic manner. What did Maharaja Pariksit again inquire from him after hearing all that he had said? Text 14, O learned Suta Goswami, please continue to explain such topics to us because we are all eager to hear. Besides that, topics which result in the discussion of the Lord Hari should certainly be discussed in the assembly of devotees. Text 15, Maharaja Pariksit, the grandson of the Pandavas, was from his very childhood a great devotee of the Lord. Even while playing with dolls, he used to worship Lord Krishna by imitating the worship of the family deity. Text 16, Sukadeva Goswami, the son of Vyasadeva, was also full in transcendental knowledge and was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, son of Vasudeva. So there must have been discussion of Lord Krishna, who is glorified by great philosophers and in the company of great devotees. Text 17, both by rising and by setting, the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone, except one who utilizes the time by discussing topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. Text 18, do the trees not live? Do the bellows of the blacksmith not breathe? All around us, do the beasts not eat and discharge semen? Text 19, men who were like dogs, hogs, camels and asses praise those men who never listen to the transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna, the deliverer from evils. Text 20, one who has not listened to the messages about the prowess and marvelous acts of the personality of Godhead and has not sung or chanted loudly the worthy songs about the Lord is to be considered to possess ear holes like the holes of snakes and a tongue like the tongue of a frog. Text 21, the upper portion of the body, though crowned with a silk turban, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands, though decorated with glittering bangles, are like those of a dead man if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead Hari. Text 22. The eyes which do not look at the symbolic representations of the personality of Godhead Vishnu, his forms, name, quality, etc., are like those printed on the plumes of the peacock, and the legs which do not move to the holy places, where the Lord is remembered, are considered to be like tree trunks. Text 23. The person who has not at any time received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon his head is certainly a dead body. And the person who has never experienced the aroma of the tulasi leaves from the lotus feet of the Lord is also a dead body, although breathing. Text 24. Certainly that heart is steel-framed which, in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, does not change when ecstasy takes place, tears fill the eyes and the hairs stand on end. Text 25. O Suta Goswami, your words are pleasing to our minds. Please therefore explain this to us as it was spoken by the great devotee Sukadeva Goswami, who was very expert in transcendental knowledge, and who spoke to Maharaja Pariksit upon being asked. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 4 The Process of Creation Text 1, Suta Goswami said, Maharaja Pariksit, the son of Uttara, after hearing the speeches of Sukadeva Goswami, which were all about the truth of the self, applied his concentration faithfully upon Lord Krishna. Text 2, Maharaja Pariksit, as a result of his wholehearted attraction for Lord Krishna, was able to give up all deep-rooted affection for his personal body, his wife, his children, his palace, his animals like horses and elephants, his treasury house, his friends and relatives, and his undisputed kingdom. Texts 3-4, O great sages, the great soul Maharaja Pariksit, constantly wrapped in thought of Lord Krishna, knowing well of his imminent death, renounced all sorts of fruitive activities, namely acts of religion, economic development and sense gratification, and thus fixed himself firmly in his natural love for Krishna and asked all these questions, exactly as you are asking me. Text 5, Maharaja Pariksit said, O learned Brahmana, you know everything because you are without material contamination. Therefore whatever you have spoken to me appears perfectly right. Your speeches are gradually destroying the darkness of my ignorance, for you are narrating the topics of the Lord. Text 6, I beg to know from you how the personality of Godhead, by his personal energies, creates these phenomenal universes as they are, which are inconceivable even to the great demigods. Text 7, kindly describe how the Supreme Lord, who is all-powerful, engages his different energies and different expansions in maintaining and again winding up the phenomenal world in the sporting spirit of a player. Text 8, O learned Brahmana, the transcendental activities of the Lord are all wonderful, and they appear inconceivable because even great endeavors by many learned scholars have still proved insufficient for understanding them. Text 9, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is one, whether he alone acts with the modes of material nature, or simultaneously expands in many forms, or expands consecutively to direct the modes of nature. Text 10, kindly clear up all these doubtful inquiries, because you are not only vastly learned in the Vedic literatures and self-realized in transcendence, but are also a great devotee of the Lord and are therefore as good as the personality of Godhead. Text 11, Suta Goswami said, when Sukadeva Goswami was thus requested by the king to describe the creative energy of the personality of Godhead, he then systematically remembered the master of the senses, Sri Krishna, and to reply properly he spoke thus. Text 12, Sukadeva Goswami said, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who, for the creation of the material world, accepts the three modes of nature. He is the complete whole residing within the body of everyone, and his ways are inconceivable. Text 13, I again offer my respectful obeisances unto the form of complete existence and transcendence, who is the liberator of the pious devotees from all distresses and the destroyer of the further advances in atheistic temperament of the non-devotee demons. For the transcendentalists who are situated in the topmost spiritual perfection, he grants their specific destinations. Text 14, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is the associate of the members of the Yadu dynasty and who is always a problem for the non-devotees. He is the supreme enjoyer of both the material and spiritual worlds, yet he enjoys his own abode in the spiritual sky. There is no one equal to him because his transcendental opulence is immeasurable. Text 15, let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrances, audience, prayers, hearing and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of the performer. Text 16, let me offer my respectful obeisances again and again unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna. The highly intellectual, simply by surrendering unto his lotus feet, are relieved of all attachments to present and future existences and without difficulty progress towards spiritual existence. Text 17. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna again and again, because the great learned sages, the great performers of charity, the great workers of distinction, the great philosophers and mystics, the great chanters of the Vedic hymns and the great followers of Vedic principles cannot achieve any fruitful result without dedication of such great qualities to the service of the Lord. Text 18. Kirata, Huna, Andhra, Pulinda, Pulkasa, Abhira, Samba, Yavana, members of the Kasa races and even others addicted to sinful acts can be purified by taking shelter of the devotees of the Lord, due to his being the supreme power. I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Text 19. He is the Supersoul and the Supreme Lord of all self-realized souls. He is the personification of the Vedas, religious scriptures and austerities. He is worshipped by Lord Brahma and Shiva and all those who are transcendental to all pretensions. Being so revered with awe and veneration, may that Supreme Absolute be pleased with me. Text 20. May Lord Sri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all devotees, the protector and glory of all the kings like Andaka and Vrisni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of all goddesses of fortune, the director of all sacrifices and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on the earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. Text 21. It is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna who gives liberation. By thinking of his lotus feet at every second, following in the footsteps of authorities, the devotee in trance can see the absolute truth. The learned mental speculators, however, think of him according to their whims. May the Lord be pleased with me. Text 22. May the Lord, who in the beginning of the creation amplified the potent knowledge of Brahma from within his heart and inspired him with full knowledge of creation and of his own self, and who appeared to be generated from the mouth of Brahma, be pleased with me. Text 23. May the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who in his Purusa incarnation causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes which are his generator, be pleased to decorate my statements. Text 24. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Srila Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Vasudeva who compiled the Vedic scriptures. The pure devotees drink up the nectarian transcendental knowledge dropping from the lotus-like mouth of the Lord. Text 25. My dear king, Brahma, the firstborn, on being questioned by Narada, exactly apprised him on this subject as it had been directly spoken by the Lord to his own son, who was impregnated with Vedic knowledge from his very birth. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 5 The Cause of All Causes Text 1. Sri Narada Muni asked Brahmaji, O chief amongst the demigods, O firstborn living entity, I beg to offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Please tell me that transcendental knowledge which specifically directs one to the truth of the individual soul and the supersoul. Text 2. My dear father, please describe factually the symptoms of this manifest world. What is its background? How is it created? How is it conserved? And under whose control is all this being done? Text 3. My dear father, all this is known to you scientifically because whatever was created in the past, whatever will be created in the future, or whatever is being created at present, as well as everything within the universe, is within your grip, just like a walnut. Text 4. My dear father, what is the source of your knowledge? Under whose protection are you standing? And under whom are you working? What is your real position? Do you alone create all entities with material elements by your personal energy? Text 5. As the spider very easily creates the network of its cobweb and manifests its power of creation without being defeated by others, so also you yourself, by employment of your self-sufficient energy, create without any other's help. Text 6. Whatever we can understand by the nomenclature, characteristics and features of a particular thing, superior, inferior or equal, eternal or temporary, is not created from any source other than that of your lordship, thou so great. Text 7. Yet we are moved to wonder about the existence of someone more powerful than you when we think of your great austerities and perfect discipline, although your good self is so powerful in the matter of creation. Text 8. My dear father, you know everything, and you are the controller of all. Therefore, may all that I have inquired from you be kindly instructed to me so that I may be able to understand it as your student. Text 9. Lord Brahma said, My dear boy Narada, being merciful to all, including me, you have asked all these questions because I have been inspired to see into the prowess of the Almighty Personality of Godhead. Text 10. Whatever you have spoken about me is not false, because unless and until one is aware of the personality of Godhead, who is the ultimate truth beyond me, one is sure to be illusioned by observing my powerful activities. Text 11. I create after the Lord's creation by his personal effulgence, known as the Brahmajyoti, just as when the sun manifests its fire, the moon, the firmament, the influential planets and the twinkling stars also manifest their brightness. Text 12. I offer my obeisances and meditate upon Lord Krishna, Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead, whose invincible potency influences them, the less intelligent class of men, to call me the Supreme Controller. Text 13. The illusory energy of the Lord cannot take precedence, being ashamed of her position, but those who are bewildered by her always talk nonsense, being absorbed in thoughts of it as I and it as mine. Text 14. The five elementary ingredients of creation, the interaction thereof set up by eternal time, and the intuition or nature of the individual living beings are all differentiated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, and in truth there is no other value in them. Text 15. The Vedic literatures are made by and are meant for the Supreme Lord, the demigods are also meant for serving the Lord as parts of his body, the different planets are also meant for the sake of the Lord, and different sacrifices are performed just to please him. Text 16. All different types of meditation or mysticism are means for realizing Narayana. All austerities are aimed at achieving Narayana. Culture of transcendental knowledge is for getting a glimpse of Narayana, and ultimately salvation is entering the kingdom of Narayana. Text 17. Inspired by him only, I discover what is already created by him, Narayana, under his vision as the all-pervading Supersoul, and I also am created by him only. Text 18. The Supreme Lord is pure, spiritual form, transcendental to all material qualities, yet for the sake of the creation of the material world and its maintenance and annihilation, he accepts through his external energy the material modes of nature called goodness, passion and ignorance. Text 19. These three modes of material nature, being further manifested as matter, knowledge and activities, put the eternally transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. Text 20. O Brahmana Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above-mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. Text 21. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities, and their particular nature, for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. Text 22. After the incarnation of the first Purusa, Karanarnavashayi Vishnu, the Mahatattva, or the principles of material creation, take place, and then time is manifested, and in course of time the three qualities appear. Nature means the three qualitative appearances. They transform into activities. Text 23. Material activities are caused by the Mahatattvas being agitated. At first there is transformation of the modes of goodness and passion, and later, due to the mode of ignorance, matter, its knowledge, and different activities of material knowledge come into play. Text 24. The self-centered materialistic ego, thus being transformed into three features, becomes known as the modes of goodness, passion and ignorance in three divisions, namely the powers that evolve matter, knowledge of material creations, and the intelligence that guides such materialistic activities. Narada, you are quite competent to understand this. Text 25. From the darkness of false ego, the first of the five elements, namely the sky, is generated. Its subtle form is the quality of sound, exactly as the seer is in relationship with the seen. Texts 26 to 29. Because the sky is transformed, the air is generated with the quality of touch, and by previous succession the air is also full of sound and the basic principles of duration of life, sense perception, mental power and bodily strength. When the air is transformed in course of time and nature's course, fire is generated, taking shape with the sense of touch and sound. Since fire is also transformed, there is a manifestation of water, full of juice and taste. As previously, it also has form and touch and is also full of sound. And water, being transformed from all variegatedness on earth, appears odorous and, as previously, becomes qualitatively full of juice, touch, sound and form respectively. Text 30. From the mode of goodness the mind is generated and becomes manifest, as also the 10 demigods controlling the bodily movements. Such demigods are known as the controller of directions, the controller of air, the sun god, the father of Daksa Prajapati, the Asvini Kumaras, the fire god, the king of heaven, the worshipable deity in heaven, the chief of the Aditya, and Brahmaji, the Prajapati. All come into existence. Text 31. By further transformation of the mode of passion, The sense organs like the ear, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. Text 32, O Narada, best of the transcendentalists, the forms of the body cannot take place as long as these created parts, namely the elements, senses, mind and modes of nature, are not assembled. Text 33, thus when all these became assembled by force of the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this universe certainly came into being by accepting both the primary and secondary causes of creation. Text 34, thus all the universes remain thousands of eons within the water, the causal ocean, and the Lord of living beings, entering in each of them, caused them to be fully animated. Text 35, the Lord, Maha Vishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it, and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assumed the Virat Rupa, with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. Text 36, great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. Text 37, the Brahmanas represent his mouth, the Kshatriyas his arms, the Vaisyas his thighs, and the Sudras are born of his legs. Text 38, the lower planetary systems, up to the limit of the earthly stratum, are said to be situated in his legs. The middle planetary systems, beginning from Bhuvarlika, are situated in his navel. And the still higher planetary systems, occupied by the demigods and highly cultured sages and saints, are situated in the chest of the Supreme Lord. Text 39, from the forefront of the chest up to the neck of the universal form of the Lord are situated the planetary systems named Janaloka and Tapaloka, whereas Satyaloka, the topmost planetary system, is situated on the head of the form. The spiritual planets, however, are eternal. Texts 40-41, my dear son Narada, know for me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Atala, is situated on the waist, the second, Vitala, is situated on the thighs, the third, Sutala, on the knees, the fourth, Talatala, on the shanks, the fifth, Mahatala, on the ankles, the sixth, Rasatala, on the upper portion of the feet, and the seventh, Patala, on the soles of the feet. Thus the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. Text 42, others may divide the whole planetary system into 3 divisions, namely the lower planetary systems on the legs, up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems, Svaralika, from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 6 Purusa Sukta Confirmed Text 1, Lord Brahma said, the mouth of the Virat Purusa, the universal form of the Lord, is the generating center of the voice, and the controlling deity is fire. His skin and 6 other layers are the generating centers of the Vedic hymns, and his tongue is the productive center of different foodstuffs and delicacies for offering to the demigods, the forefathers and the general mass of people. Text 2, his 2 nostrils are the generating centers of our breathing and of all other airs, his smelling powers generate the Asvini Kumar demigods and all kinds of medicinal herbs, and his breathing energies produce different kinds of fragrance. Text 3, his eyes are the generating centers of all kinds of forms, and they glitter and illuminate. His eyeballs are like the sun and the heavenly planets. His ears hear from all sides and are receptacles for all the Vedas, and his sense of hearing is the generating center of the sky and of all kinds of sound. Text 4, his bodily surface is the breeding ground for the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin, like the moving air, is the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. Text 5, the hairs on his body are the cause of all vegetation, particularly of those trees which are required as ingredients for sacrifice. The hairs on his head and face are reservoirs for the clouds, and his nails are the breeding ground of electricity, stones and iron ores. Text 6, the Lord's arms are the productive fields for the great demigods and other leaders of the living entities who protect the general mass. Text 7, thus the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. Text 8, from the Lord's genitals originate water, semen, generatives, rains and the procreators. His genitals are the cause of a pleasure that counteracts the distress of begetting. Text 9, O Narada, the evacuating outlet of the universal form of the Lord is the abode of the controlling deity of death, Mitra, and the evacuating hole in the rectum of the Lord is the place of envy, misfortune, death, hell, etc. Text 10, the back of the Lord is the place for all kinds of frustration and ignorance, as well as for immorality. From his veins flow the great rivers and rivulets, and on his bones are stacked the great mountains. Text 11. The impersonal feature of the Lord is the abode of great oceans, and his belly is the resting place for the materially annihilated living entities. His heart is the abode of the subtle material bodies of living beings. Thus it is known by the intelligent class of men. Text 12. Also, the consciousness of that great personality is the abode of religious principles, mine, yours, and those of the four bachelors Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara and Sanandana. That consciousness is also the abode of truth and transcendental knowledge. Texts 13-16, beginning from me, Brahma, down to you and Bhava, Shiva, all the great sages who were born before you, the demigods, the demons, the nagas, the human beings, the birds, the beasts, as well as the reptiles, etc., and all phenomenal manifestations of the universes, namely the planets, stars, asteroids, luminaries, lightning, thunder, and the inhabitants of the different planetary systems, namely the Gandharvas, Asparas, Yaksas, Rakshas, Bhutaganas, Uragas, Pasas, Pitas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, Karanas, and all other different varieties of living entities, including the birds, beasts, trees and everything that be, are all covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present and future, although he is transcendental to all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches. Text 17. The sun illuminates both internally and externally by expanding its radiation. Similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by expanding his universal form, maintains everything in the creation both internally and externally. Text 18. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the controller of immortality and fearlessness, and he is transcendental to death and the fruitive actions of the material world. O Narada, O Brahmana, it is therefore difficult to measure the glories of the Supreme Person. Text 19. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be known as the supreme reservoir of all material opulences by the 1/4 of his energy in which all the living entities exist. Deathlessness, fearlessness and freedom from the anxieties of old age and disease exist in the kingdom of God, which is beyond the 3 higher planetary systems and beyond the material coverings. Text 20. The spiritual world, which consists of 3/4 of the Lord's energy, is situated beyond this material world, and it is especially meant for those who will never be reborn. Others, who are attached to family life and who do not strictly follow celibacy vows, must live within the 3 material worlds. Text 21. By his energies, the all-pervading personality of Godhead is thus comprehensively the master in the activities of controlling and in devotional service. He is the ultimate master of both nescience and factual knowledge of all situations. Text 22. From that personality of Godhead, all the universal globes and the universal form with all material elements, qualities and senses are generated. Yet he is aloof from such material manifestations, like the sun, which is separate from its rays and heat. Text 23. When I was born from the abdominal lotus flower of the Lord, Maha Vishnu, the great person, I had no ingredients for sacrificial performances except the bodily limbs of the great personality of Godhead. Text 24. For performing sacrificial ceremonies, one requires sacrificial ingredients, such as flowers, leaves and straw, along with the sacrificial altar and a suitable time, spring. Text 25. Other requirements are utensils, grains, clarified butter, honey, gold, earth, water, the Arjiveda, Yajurveda and Samaveda and 4 priests to perform the sacrifice. Text 26. Other necessities include invoking the different names of the demigods by specific hymns and vows of recompense, in accordance with the particular scripture, for specific purposes and by specific processes. Text 27. Thus I had to arrange all these necessary ingredients and paraphernalia of sacrifice from the personal bodily parts of the personality of Godhead. By invocation of the demigods' names, the ultimate goal, Vishnu, was gradually attained, and thus compensation and ultimate offering were complete. Text 28. Thus I created the ingredients and paraphernalia for offering sacrifice out of the parts of the body of the Supreme Lord, the enjoyer of the sacrifice, and I performed the sacrifice to satisfy the Lord. Text 29. My dear son, thereafter your 9 brothers, who are the masters of living creatures, performed the sacrifice with proper rituals to satisfy both the manifested and non-manifested personalities. Text 30. Thereafter, the Manas, the fathers of mankind, the great sages, the forefathers, the learned scholars, the Daityas in mankind performed sacrifices meant to please the Supreme Lord. Text 31. All the material manifestations of the universes are therefore situated in his powerful material energies, which he accepts self-sufficiently, although he is eternally without affinity for the material modes. Text 32, By his will, I create, Lord Shiva destroys, and he himself, in his eternal form as the personality of Godhead, maintains everything. He is the powerful controller of these three energies. Text 33, My dear son, whatever you inquired from me I have thus explained unto you, and you must know for certain that whatever there is, either as cause or as effect, both in the material and spiritual worlds, is dependent on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 34, O Narada, because I have caught hold of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, with great zeal, whatever I say has never proved to have been false. Nor is the progress of my mind ever deterred. Nor are my senses ever degraded by temporary attachment to matter. Text 35, Although I am known as the great Brahma, perfect in the disciplic succession of Vedic wisdom, and although I have undergone all austerities and am an expert in mystic powers and self-realization, and although I am recognized as such by the great forefathers of the living entities, who offer me respectful obeisances, still I cannot understand him, the Lord, the very source of my birth. Text 36, Therefore it is best for me to surrender unto his feet, which alone can deliver one from the miseries of repeated birth and death. Such surrender is all auspicious and allows one to perceive all happiness. Even the sky cannot estimate the limits of its own expansion. So what can others do when the Lord himself is unable to estimate his own limits? Text 37, Since neither Lord Shiva nor you nor I could ascertain the limits of spiritual happiness, how can other demigods know it? And because all of us are bewildered by the illusory, external energy of the Supreme Lord, we can see only this manifested cosmos according to our individual ability. Text 38, Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto that Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose incarnations and activities are chanted by us for glorification, though he can hardly be fully known as he is. Text 39, That Supreme Original Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, expanding his plenary portion as Maha Vishnu, the first incarnation, creates this manifested cosmos, but he is unborn. The creation, however, takes place in him, and the material substance and manifestations are all himself. He maintains them for some time and absorbs them into himself again. Texts 40-41, The personality of Godhead is pure, being free from all contaminations of material tinges. He is the absolute truth and the embodiment of full and perfect knowledge. He is all-pervading, without beginning or end, and without rival. O Narada, O great sage, the great thinkers can know him when completely freed from all material hankerings and when sheltered under undisturbed conditions of the senses. Otherwise, by untenable arguments, all is distorted, and the Lord disappears from our sight. Text 42, Karanarnavashayi Vishnu is the first incarnation of the Supreme Lord, and he is the master of eternal time, space, cause and effects, mind, the elements, the material ego, the modes of nature, the senses, the universal form of the Lord, Garbhodakasayi Vishnu, and the sum total of all living beings, both moving and non-moving. Texts 43-45, I myself, Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, great generators of living beings like Daksa and Prajapati, yourselves, Narada and the Kumaras, heavenly demigods like Indra and Kandra, the leaders of the Berloka planets, the leaders of the earthly planets, the leaders of the lower planets, the leaders of the Gandharva planets, the leaders of the Vidyadhara planets, the leaders of the Karanalika planets, the leaders of the Yaksas, Rakshas, and Duragas, the great sages, the great demons, the great atheists and the great spacemen, as well as the dead bodies, evil spirits, Satans, Jinn, Kusmandas, great aquatics, great beasts and great birds, etc. In other words, anything and everything which is exceptionally possessed of power, opulence, mental and perceptual dexterity, strength, forgiveness, beauty, modesty, opulence, and breeding, whether in form or formless, may appear to be the specific truth and the form of the Lord, but actually they are not so. They are only a fragment of the transcendental potency of the Lord. Text 46, O Narada, now I shall state, one after another, the transcendental incarnations of the Lord known as Lila avatars. Hearing of their activities counteracts all foul matters accumulated in the air. These pastimes are pleasing to hear and are to be relished. Therefore they are in my heart. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 7 Scheduled Incarnations with Specific Functions Text 1, Lord Brahma said, when the unlimitedly powerful Lord assumed the form of a boar as a pastime, just to lift the planet Earth, which was drowned in the great ocean of the universe called the Garbhodaka, the first demon, Hiranyaksa, appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. Text 2. The Prajapati first begot Suyajna in the womb of his wife Akuti, and then Suyajna begot demigods, headed by Suyama, in the womb of his wife Daksina. Suyajna, as the Indradeva, diminished very great miseries in the three planetary systems, upper, lower and intermediate, and because he so diminished the miseries of the universe, he was later called Hari by the great father of mankind, namely Svayam Bhagavan. Text 3. The Lord then appeared as the Kapila incarnation, being the son of the Prajapati Brahmana Kardama and his wife, Devahuti, along with 9 other women, sisters. He spoke to his mother about self-realization, by which, in that very lifetime, she became fully cleansed of the mud of the material modes and thereby achieved liberation, the path of Kapila. Text 4. The great sage Atri prayed for offspring, and the Lord, being satisfied with him, promised to incarnate as a tree son, Dattatreya, Datta, the son of a tree. And by the grace of the lotus feet of the Lord, many Yadas, Hayas, etc., became so purified that they obtained both material and spiritual blessings. Text 5. To create different planetary systems I had to undergo austerities and penance, and the Lord, thus being pleased with me, incarnated in 4 Sanas, Sanaka, Sanatkumara, Sanandana and Sanatana. In the previous creation the spiritual truth was devastated, but the 4 Sanas explained it so nicely that the truth at once became clearly perceived by the sages. Text 6. To exhibit his personal way of austerity and penance, he appeared in twin forms as Narayana and Nara in the womb of Morti, the wife of Dharma and the daughter of Daksa. Celestial beauties, the companions of Cupid, went to try to break his vows, but they were unsuccessful, for they saw that many beauties like them were emanating from him, the personality of Godhead. Text 7. Great stalwarts like Lord Shiva can, by their wrathful glances, overcome lust and vanquish him, yet they cannot be free from the overwhelming effects of their own wrath. Such wrath can never enter into the heart of him, the Lord, who is above all this. So how can lust take shelter in his mind? Text 8. Being insulted by sharp words spoken by the co-wife of the king, even in his presence, Prince Dhruva, though only a boy, took to severe penances in the forest. And the Lord, being satisfied by his prayer, awarded him the Dhruva planet, which is worshipped by great sages, both upward and downward. Text 9. Maharaja Vina went astray from the path of righteousness, and the Brahmanas chastised him by the thunderbolt curse. By this King Vina was burnt with his good deeds and opulence and was en route to hell. The Lord, by his causeless mercy, descended as his son, by the name of Prithu, delivered the condemned King Vina from hell, and exploited the earth by drawing all kinds of crops as produce. Text 10. The Lord appeared as the son of Sudevi, the wife of King Nagi, and was known as Risabhadeva. He performed materialistic yoga to equibalance the mind. This stage is also accepted as the highest perfectional situation of liberation, wherein one is situated in oneself and is completely satisfied. Text 11. The Lord appeared as the Hayagriva incarnation in the sacrifice performed by me, Brahma. He is the personified sacrifices, and the hue of his body is golden. He is the personified Vedas as well, and the supersoul of all demigods. When he breathed, all the sweet sounds of the Vedic hymns came out of his nostrils. Text 12. At the end of the millennium, the would-be Vaivasvata Manu, of the name Satyavrata, would see that the Lord in the fish incarnation is the shelter of all kinds of living entities, up to those in the earthly planets. Because of my fear of the vast water at the end of the millennium, the Vedas come out of my, Brahma's, mouth, and the Lord enjoys those vast waters and protects the Vedas. Text 13. The primeval Lord then assumed the tortoise incarnation in order to serve as a resting place, pivot, for the Mandara mountain, which was acting as a churning rod. The demigods and demons were churning the ocean of milk with the Mandara mountain in order to extract nectar. The mountain moved back and forth, scratching the back of Lord Tortoise, who, while partially sleeping, was experiencing an itching sensation. Text 14. The personality of Godhead assumed the incarnation of Nrsimhadeva in order to vanquish the great fears of the demigods. He killed the king of the demons, Hiranyakasipu, who challenged the Lord with a club in his hand, by placing the demon on his thighs and piercing him with his nails, rolling his eyebrows in anger and showing his fearful teeth and mouth. Text 15. The leader of the elephants, whose leg was attacked in a river by a crocodile of superior strength, was much aggrieved. Taking a lotus flower in his trunk, he addressed the Lord, saying, O original enjoyer, Lord of the universe! O deliverer, as famous as a place of pilgrimage! All are purified simply by hearing your holy name, which is worthy to be chanted. Text 16. The personality of Godhead, after hearing the elephant's plea, felt that the elephant needed his immediate help, for he was in great distress. Thus at once the Lord appeared there on the wings of the king of birds, Garuda, fully equipped with his weapon, the wheel, Chakra. With the wheel he cut to pieces the mouth of the crocodile to save the elephant, and he delivered the elephant by lifting him by his trunk. Text 17. The Lord, although transcendental to all material modes, still surpassed all the qualities of the sons of Aditi, known as the Aditya. The Lord appeared as the youngest son of Aditi. And because he surpassed all the planets of the universe, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. On the pretense of asking for a measurement of 3 footsteps of land, he took away all the lands of Bali Maharaja. He asked simply because without begging, no authority can take one's rightful possession. Text 18. Bali Maharaja, who put on his head the water washed from the lotus feet of the Lord, did not think of anything besides his promise, in spite of being forbidden by his spiritual master. The king dedicated his own personal body to fulfill the measurement of the Lord's 3rd step. For such a personality, even the kingdom of heaven, which he conquered by his strength, was of no value. Text 19. O Narada, you were taught about the science of God and his transcendental loving service by the personality of Godhead in his incarnation of Hamsavatara. He was very much pleased with you, due to your intense proportion of devotional service. He also explained unto you, lucidly, the full science of devotional service, which is especially understandable by persons who are soul-surrendered unto Lord Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. Text 20. As the incarnation of Manu, the Lord became the descendant of the Manu dynasty and ruled over the miscreant kingly order, subduing them by his powerful wheel weapon. Undeterred in all circumstances, his rule was characterized by his glorious fame, which spread over the 3 lokas, and above them to the planetary system of Satyaloka, the topmost in the universe. Text 21. The Lord in his incarnation of Dhanvantari very quickly cures the diseases of the ever-diseased living entities simply by his fame personified, and only because of him do the demigods achieve long lives. Thus the personality of Godhead becomes ever glorified. He also exacted a share from the sacrifices, and it is he only who inaugurated the medical science or the knowledge of medicine in the universe. Text 22. When the ruling administrators, who are known as the Kshatriyas, turned astray from the path of the absolute truth, being desirous to suffer in hell, the Lord, in his incarnation as the sage Parasurama, uprooted those unwanted kings, who appeared as the thorns of the earth. Thus he thrice 7 times uprooted the Kshatriyas with his keenly sharpened chopper. Text 23. Due to his causeless mercy upon all living entities within the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, along with his plenary extensions, appeared in the family of Maharaja Ikshvaku as the lord of his internal potency, Sita. Under the order of his father, Maharaja Dasaratha, he entered the forest and lived there for considerable years with his wife and younger brother. Ravana, who was very materially powerful, with 10 heads on his shoulders, committed a great offense against him and was thus ultimately vanquished. Text 24. The personality of Godhead Ramacandra, being aggrieved for his distant intimate friend, Sita, glanced over the city of the enemy Ravana with red-hot eyes like those of Hara, who wanted to burn the kingdom of heaven. The great ocean, trembling in fear, gave him his way because its family members, the aquatics like the sharks, snakes and crocodiles, were being burned by the heat of the angry red-hot eyes of the Lord. Text 25. When Ravana was engaged in the battle, the trunk of the elephant which carried the king of heaven, Indra, broke in pieces, having collided with the chest of Ravana, and the scattered broken parts illuminated all directions. Ravana therefore felt proud of his prowess and began to loiter in the midst of the fighting soldiers, thinking himself the conqueror of all directions. But his laughter, overtaken by joy, along with his very air of life, suddenly ceased with the tingling sound of the bow of Ramacandra, the personality of Godhead. Text 26. When the world is overburdened by the fighting strength of kings who have no faith in God, the Lord, just to diminish the distress of the world, descends with his plenary portion. The Lord comes in his original form, with beautiful black hair. And just to expand his transcendental glories, he acts extraordinarily. No one can properly estimate how great he is. Text 27. There is no doubt about Lord Krishna as being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Patanu when he was just on the lap of his mother, to overturn a cart with his leg when he was only 3 months old, or to uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky, when he was only crawling? All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. Text 28. Then also when the cowherd boys and their animals drank the poison water of the river Yamuna, and after the Lord, in his childhood, revived them by his merciful glance, just to purify the water of the river Yamuna he jumped into it as if playing and chastised the venomous Kalia snake, which was lurking there, its tongue emitting waves of poison. Who can perform such Herculean tasks but the Supreme Lord? Text 29, on the very night of the day of the chastisement of the Kaliya snake, when the inhabitants of Rajabhumi were sleeping carefreely, there was a forest fire ablaze due to dry leaves, and it appeared that all the inhabitants were sure to meet their death. But the Lord, along with Balarama, saved them simply by closing his eyes. Such are the superhuman activities of the Lord. Text 30, when the cowherd woman, Krishna's foster mother, Yasoda, was trying to tie the hands of her son with ropes, she found the rope to be always insufficient in length, and when she finally gave up, Lord Krishna, by and by, opened his mouth, wherein the mother found all the universes situated. Seeing this, she was doubtful in her mind, but she was convinced in a different manner of the mystic nature of her son. Text 31, Lord Krishna saved his foster father, Nanda Maharaja, from the fear of the demigod Varuna and released the cowherd boys from the caves of the mountain, for they were placed there by the son of Maya. Also, to the inhabitants of Vrindavana, who were busy working during daytime and sleeping soundly at night because of their hard labor in the day, Lord Krishna awarded promotion to the highest planet in the spiritual sky. All these acts are transcendental and certainly prove without any doubt his godhood. Text 32, when the cowherd men of Vrindavana, under instruction of Krishna, stopped offering sacrifice to the heavenly king, Indra, the whole tract of land known as Vraya was threatened with being washed away by constant heavy rains for 7 days. Lord Krishna, out of his causeless mercy upon the inhabitants of Vraya, held up the hill known as Govardhana with one hand only, although he was only 7 years old. He did this to protect the animals from the onslaught of water. Text 33, when the Lord was engaged in his pastimes of the Rasa dance in the forest of Vrindavana, enlivening the sexual desires of the wives of the inhabitants of Vrindavana by sweet and melodious songs, a demon of the name Sankakuta, a rich follower of the treasurer of heaven, Kuvera, kidnapped the damsels, and the Lord severed his head from his trunk. Texts 34-35, all demonic personalities like Pralamba, Dhanuka, Baka, Kesi, Arista, Kanura, Mustika, Kuvalayapita elephant, Kamsa, Yavana, Narakasura, and Pandraka, great marshals like Salva, Devavita monkey and Valvala, Dandavakra, the 7 bulls, Sambara, Vijayarutha, and Rukmi, as also great warriors like Kamboja, Matsya, Kuru, Srijaya, and Kekaya, would all fight vigorously, either with the Lord Hari directly or with him under his names of Baladeva, Arjuna, Bhima, etc. The demons, thus being killed, would attain either the impersonal Brahmajyoti or his personal abode in the Vaikunta planets. Text 36, the Lord himself in his incarnation as the son of Satyavati, Vyasadeva, will consider his compilation of the Vedic literature to be very difficult for the less intelligent persons with short life, and thus he will divide the tree of Vedic knowledge into different branches, according to the circumstances of the particular age. Text 37, when the atheists, after being well versed in the Vedic scientific knowledge, annihilate inhabitants of different planets, flying unseen in the sky on well-built rockets prepared by the great scientist Maya, the Lord will bewilder their minds by dressing himself attractively as Buddha and will preach on sub-religious principles. Text 38, thereafter, at the end of Kali Yuga, when there exist no topics on the subject of God, even at the residences of so-called saints and respectable gentlemen of the 3 higher castes, and when the power of government is transferred to the hands of ministers elected from the low-born Sudra class or those less than them, and when nothing is known of the techniques of sacrifice, even by word, at that time the Lord will appear as the supreme chastiser. Text 39, at the beginning of creation there are penance, myself, Brahma, and the Prajapatis, the great sages who generate, then, during the maintenance of the creation, there are Lord Vishnu, the demigods with controlling powers, and the kings of different planets. But at the end there is irreligion, and then Lord Shiva and the atheists full of anger, etc. All of them are different representative manifestations of the energy of the supreme power, the Lord. Text 40, who can describe completely the prowess of Vishnu? Even the scientist, who might have counted the particles of the atoms of the universe, cannot do so. Because it is he only who in his form of Trivikrama moved his leg effortlessly beyond the topmost planet, Satyaloka, up to the neutral state of the 3 modes of material nature. And all were moved. Text 41, neither I nor all the sages born before you know fully the omnipotent personality of Godhead. So what can others, who are born after us, know about him? Even the first incarnation of the Lord, namely Sessa, has not been able to reach the limit of such knowledge, although he is describing the qualities of the Lord with 100 faces. Text 42, but anyone who is specifically favored by the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, due to unalloyed surrender unto the service of the Lord, can overcome the insurmountable ocean of illusion and can understand the Lord. But those who are attached to this body, which is meant to be eaten at the end by dogs and jackals, cannot do so. Texts 43 to 45, O Narada, although the potencies of the Lord are unknowable and immeasurable, still, because we are all surrendered souls, we know how he acts through Yoga Maya potencies. And, similarly, the potencies of the Lord are also known to the all-powerful Shiva, the great king of the atheist family, namely Prahlada Maharaja, Svayambhuva Manu, his wife Satarupa, his sons and daughters like Priyavrata, Uttanapada, Akuti, Devahuti, and Prasuti, Prasanabharhi, Rabu, Unga the father of Vina, Maharaja Dhruva, Ikshvaku, Ila, Mukyukanda, Maharaja Janaka, Gudi, Raghu, Ambarasa, Sagara, Gaya, Nausa, Mandhata, Alarka, Satadhanv, Anu, Rantadeva, Bhisma, Bali, Amrtaraya, Dilapa, Saubari, Utanka, Sibi, Devala, Pipalita, Sarasvata, Uddhava, Parasara, Burasena, Vibhishana, Hanuman, Sukadeva Goswami, Arjuna, Arstisena, Vidura, Srutadeva, etc. Text 46, surrendered souls, even from groups leading sinful lives, such as women, the laborer class, the mountaineers and the Siberians, or even the birds and beasts, can also know about the science of Godhead and become liberated from the clutches of the illusory energy by surrendering unto the pure devotees of the Lord and by following in their footsteps in devotional service. Text 47, what is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and is fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter. Uncontaminated and without distinctions, he is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Text 48, in such a transcendental state there is no need of artificial control of the mind, mental speculation or meditation, as performed by the jnanis and yogis. One gives up such processes, as the heavenly king, Indra, foregoes the trouble to dig a well. Text 49, the personality of Godhead is the supreme master of everything auspicious because the results of whatever actions are performed by the living being, in either the material or spiritual existence, are rewarded by the Lord. As such, he is the ultimate benefactor. Every individual living entity is unborn, and therefore even after the annihilation of the material elementary body, the living entity exists, exactly like the air within the body. Text 50, my dear son, I have now explained in brief the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is creator of the manifested worlds. Without him, Hari, the Lord, there are no other causes of the phenomenal and noumenal existences. Text 51, O Narada, this science of God, SRIMAD Bhāgavatam, was spoken to me in summary by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and it was spoken as the accumulation of his diverse potencies. Please expand this science yourself. Text 52, please describe the science of Godhead with determination and in a manner by which it will be quite possible for the human being to develop transcendental devotional service unto the personality of Godhead Hari, the supersoul of every living being and the summum bonum source of all energies. Text 53, the Lord's activities in association with his different energies should be described, appreciated and heard in accordance with the teachings of the Supreme Lord. If this is done regularly with devotion and respect, one is sure to get out of the illusory energy of the Lord. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 8 Questions by King Pariksit. Text 1, King Pariksit inquired from Sukadeva Goswami, how did Narada Muni, whose hearers are as fortunate as those instructed by Lord Brahma, explain the transcendental qualities of the Lord, who is without material qualities, and before whom did he speak? Text 2, the king said, I wish to know. Narrations concerning the Lord, who possesses wonderful potencies, are certainly auspicious for living beings in all planets. Text 3, O greatly fortunate Sukadeva Goswami, please continue narrating SRIMAD Bhāgavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and, being completely freed from material qualities, thus relinquish this body. Text 4, persons who hear SRIMAD Bhāgavatam regularly and are always taking the matter very seriously will have the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna manifested in their hearts within a short time. Text 5, the sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, i.e., SRIMAD Bhāgavatam, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee, sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship, and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger and hankering. Thus it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. Text 6, a pure devotee of the Lord whose heart has once been cleansed by the process of devotional service never relinquishes the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, for they fully satisfy him, as a traveler is satisfied at home after a troubled journey. Text 7, O learned Brahmana, the transcendental spirit soul is different from the material body. Does he acquire the body accidentally or by some cause? Will you kindly explain this, for it is known to you. Text 8, if the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whose abdomen the lotus stem sprouted, is possessed of a gigantic body according to his own caliber and measurement, then what is the specific difference between the body of the Lord and those of common living entities? Text 9, Brahma, who was not born of a material source but of the lotus flower coming out of the navel abdomen of the Lord, is the creator of all those who are materially born. Of course, by the grace of the Lord, Brahma was able to see the form of the Lord. Text 10, please also explain the personality of Godhead, who lies in every heart as the Supersoul, and as the Lord of all energies, but is untouched by his external energy. Text 11, O learned Brahmana, it was formerly explained that all the planets of the universe with their respective governors are situated in the different parts of the gigantic body of the Virat Purusa. I have also heard that the different planetary systems are supposed to be in the gigantic body of the Virat Purusa. But what is their actual position? Will you please explain that? Text 12, also please explain the duration of time between creation and annihilation, and that of other subsidiary creations, as well as the nature of time, indicated by the sound of past, present and future. Also, please explain the duration and measurement of life of the different living beings known as the demigods, the human beings, etc., in different planets of the universe. Text 13, O purest of the Brahmanas, please also explain the cause of the different durations of time, both short and long, as well as the beginning of time, following the course of action. Text 14, then again, kindly describe how the proportionate accumulation of the reactions resulting from the different modes of material nature act upon the desiring living being, promoting or degrading him among the different species of life, beginning from the demigods down to the most insignificant creatures. Text 15, O best of the Brahmanas, please also describe how the creation of the globes throughout the universe, the four directions of the heavens, the sky, the planets, the stars, the mountains, the rivers, the seas and the islands, as well as their different kinds of inhabitants, takes place. Text 16, also, please describe the inner and outer space of the universe by specific divisions, as well as the character and activities of the great souls, and also the characteristics of the different classifications of the castes and orders of social life. Text 17, please explain all the different ages and the duration of the creation, and also the duration of such ages. Also tell me about the different activities of the different incarnations of the Lord in different ages. Text 18, please also explain what may generally be the common religious affiliations of human society, as well as their specific occupational duties in religion, the classification of the social orders as well as the administrative royal orders, and the religious principles for one who may be in distress. Text 19, kindly explain all about the elementary principles of creation, the number of such elementary principles, their causes, and their development, and also the process of devotional service and the method of mystic powers. Text 20, what are the opulences of the great mystics, and what is their ultimate realization? How does the perfect mystic become detached from the subtle astral body? What is the basic knowledge of the Vedic literatures, including the branches of history and the supplementary Puranas? Text 21, please explain unto me how the living beings are generated, how they are maintained, and how they are annihilated. Tell me also of the advantages and disadvantages of discharging devotional service unto the Lord. What are the Vedic rituals and injunctions of the supplementary Vedic rites, and what are the procedures of religion, economic development and sense satisfaction? Text 22, please also explain how, merged in the body of the Lord, living beings are created, and how the infidels appear in the world. Also please explain how the unconditioned living entities exist. Text 23, the independent personality of Godhead enjoys his pastimes by his internal potency and at the time of annihilation gives them up to the external potency, and he remains a witness to it all. Text 24, O great sage, representative of the Lord, kindly satisfy my inquisitiveness in all that I have inquired from you and all that I may not have inquired from you from the very beginning of my questionings. Since I am a soul surrendered unto you, please impart full knowledge in this connection. Text 25, O great sage, you are as good as Brahma, the original living being. Others follow custom only, as followed by the previous philosophical speculators. Text 26, O learned Brahmana, because of my drinking the nectar of the message of the infallible personality of Godhead, which is flowing down from the ocean of your speeches, I do not feel any sort of exhaustion due to my fasting. Text 27, Suta Goswami said, thus Sukadeva Goswami, being invited by Maharaja Pariksit to speak on topics of the Lord Sri Krishna with the devotees, was very much pleased. Text 28. He began to reply to the inquiries of Maharaja Pariksit by saying that the science of the personality of Godhead was spoken first by the Lord himself to Brahma when he was first born. Śrīmad Bhāgavatam is the supplementary Vedic literature, and it is just in pursuance of the Vedas. Text 29. He also prepared himself to reply to all that King Pariksit had inquired from him. Maharaja Pariksit was the best in the dynasty of the Pandus, and thus he was able to ask the right questions from the right person. Library Śrīmad Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 9 answers by citing the Lord's version. Text 1. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, O King, unless one is influenced by the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no meaning to the relationship of the pure soul and pure consciousness with the material body. That relationship is just like a dreamer seeing his own body working. Text 2. The illusion living entity appears in so many forms offered by the external energy of the Lord. While enjoying in the modes of material nature, the uncaged living entity misconceives, thinking in terms of I and mine. Text 3. As soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and material energy, he at once gives up the two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self. Text 4. O King, the personality of Godhead, being very much pleased with Lord Brahma because of his non-deceptive penance in bhakti yoga, presented his eternal and transcendental form before Brahma. And that is the objective goal for purifying the conditioned soul. Text 5. Lord Brahma, the first spiritual master, supreme in the universe, could not trace out the source of his lotus seat, and while thinking of creating the material world, he could not understand the proper direction for such creative work, nor could he find out the process for such creation. Text 6. While thus engaged in thinking, in the water, Brahmaji heard twice from nearby two syllables joined together. One of the syllables was taken from the 16th and the other from the 21st of the Sparsa alphabets, and both joined to become the wealth of the renounced order of life. Text 7. When he heard the sound, he tried to find the speaker, searching on all sides. But when he was unable to find anyone besides himself, he thought it wise to sit down on his lotus seat firmly and give his attention to the execution of penance, as he was instructed. Text 8. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculations of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky, and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. Text 9. The personality of Godhead, being thus very much satisfied with the penance of Lord Brahma, was pleased to manifest his personal abode, Vakunta, the supreme planet above all others. This transcendental abode of the Lord is adored by all self-realized persons freed from all kinds of miseries and fear of illusory existence. Text 10. In that personal abode of the Lord, the material modes of ignorance and passion do not prevail, nor is there any of their influence in goodness. There is no predominance of the influence of time, so what to speak of the illusory, external energy, it cannot enter that region. Without discrimination, both the demigods and the demons worship the Lord as devotees. Text 11. The inhabitants of the Vaikuntha planets are described as having a glowing sky-bluish complexion. Their eyes resemble lotus flowers, their dress is of yellowish color, and their bodily features very attractive. They are just the age of growing youths, they all have 4 hands, they are all nicely decorated with pearl necklaces with ornamental medallions, and they all appear to be effulgent. Text 12. Some of them are effulgent like coral and diamonds in complexion and have garlands on their heads, blooming like lotus flowers, and some wear earrings. Text 13. The Vaikuntha planets are also surrounded by various airplanes, all glowing and brilliantly situated. These airplanes belong to the great Mahatmas or devotees of the Lord. The ladies are as beautiful as lightning because of their celestial complexions, and all these combined together appear just like the sky decorated with both clouds and lightning. Text 14. The goddess of fortune in her transcendental form is engaged in the loving service of the Lord's lotus feet, and being moved by the black bees, followers of spring. She is not only engaged in variegated pleasure, service to the Lord, along with her constant companions, but is also engaged in singing the glories of the Lord's activities. Text 15. Lord Brahma saw in the Vaikuntha planets the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of the entire devotee community, the Lord of the goddess of fortune, the Lord of all sacrifices, and the Lord of the universe, and who is served by the foremost servitors like Nanda, Sunanda, Prabhala, and Arhana, his immediate associates. Text 16. the personality of Godhead, seen leaning favorably towards his loving servitors, his very sight intoxicating and attractive, appeared to be very much satisfied. He had a smiling face decorated with an enchanting reddish hue. He was dressed in yellow robes and warrior rings and a helmet on his head. He had 4 hands, and his chest was marked with the lines of the goddess of fortune. Text 17. The Lord was seated on his throne and was surrounded by different energies like the 4, the 16, the 5, and the 6 natural opulences, along with other insignificant energies of the temporary character. But he was the factual Supreme Lord, enjoying his own abode. Text 18. Lord Brahma, thus seeing the personality of Godhead in his fullness, was overwhelmed with joy within his heart, and thus in full transcendental love and ecstasy, his eyes filled with tears of love. He thus bowed down before the Lord. That is the way of the highest perfection for the living being, Paramhamsa. Text 19. And seeing Brahma present before him, the Lord accepted him as worthy to create living beings, to be controlled as he desired, and thus being much satisfied with him, the Lord shook hands with Brahma and, slightly smiling, addressed him thus. Text 20. The beautiful personality of Godhead addressed Lord Brahma, O Brahma, impregnated with the Vedas, I am very much pleased with your long accumulated penance with the desire for creation. Hardly am I pleased with the pseudo-mystics. Text 21. I wish you good luck. O Brahma, you may ask from me, the giver of all benediction, all that you may desire. You may know that the ultimate benediction, as the result of all penances, is to see me by realization. Text 22. The highest perfectional ingenuity is the personal perception of my abodes, and this has been possible because of your submissive attitude in the performance of severe penance according to my order. Text 23. O sinless Brahma, you may know from me that it was I who first ordered you to undergo penance when you were perplexed in your duty. Such penance is my heart and soul, and therefore penance and I are non-different. Text 24. I create this cosmos by such penance, I maintain it by the same energy, and I withdraw it all by the same energy. Therefore the potency is penance only. Text 25. Lord Brahma said, O personality of Godhead, you are situated in every living entity's heart as the supreme director, and therefore you are aware of all endeavors by your superior intelligence, without any hindrance whatsoever. Text 26. In spite of that, my Lord, I am praying to you to kindly fulfill my desire. May I please be informed how, in spite of your transcendental form, you assume the mundane form, although you have no such form at all. Text 27. And, please inform me, how you, by your own self, manifest different energies for annihilation, generation, acceptance and maintenance by combination and permutation. Text 28. O Master of all energies, please tell me philosophically all about them. You play like a spider that covers itself by its own energy, and your determination is infallible. Text 29. Please tell me so that I may be taught in the matter by the instruction of the personality of Godhead and may thus act instrumentally to generate living entities, without being conditioned by such activities. Text 30. O my Lord, the unborn, you have shaken hands with me just as a friend does with a friend, as if equal in position. I shall be engaged in the creation of different types of living entities, and I shall be occupied in your service. I shall have no perturbation, but I pray that all this may not give rise to pride, as if I were the supreme. Text 31. The personality of Godhead said, knowledge about me as described in the scriptures is very confidential, and it has to be realized in conjunction with devotional service. The necessary paraphernalia for that process is being explained by me. You may take it up carefully. Text 32. All of me, namely my actual eternal form and my transcendental existence, color, qualities and activities, let all be awakened within you by factual realization, out of my causeless mercy. Text 33. Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself. Nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead. Text 34. O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness. Text 35. O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time I am outside of everything. Text 36. A person who is searching after the supreme absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, must certainly search for it up to this, in all circumstances, in all space and time, and both directly and indirectly. Text 37. O Brahma, just follow this conclusion by fixed concentration of mind, and no pride will disturb you, neither in the partial nor in the final devastation. Text 38, Sukadeva Goswami said to Maharaja Pariksit, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, after being seen in his transcendental form, instructing Brahmaji, the leader of the living entities, disappeared. Text 39, on the disappearance of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, who is the object of transcendental enjoyment for the senses of devotees, Brahma, with folded hands, began to recreate the universe, full with living entities, as it was previously. Text 40, thus once upon a time the forefather of living entities and the father of religiousness, Lord Brahma, situated himself in acts of regulative principles, desiring self-interest for the welfare of all living entities. Text 41, Narada, the most dear of the inheritor sons of Brahma, always ready to serve his father, strictly follows the instructions of his father by his mannerly behavior, meekness and sense control. Text 42, Narada very much pleased his father and desired to know all about the energies of Vishnu, the master of all energies, for Narada was the greatest of all sages and greatest of all devotees, O king. Text 43, the great sage Narada also inquired in detail from his father, Brahma, the great-grandfather of all the universe, after seeing him well satisfied. Text 44, thereupon the supplementary Vedic literature, SRIMAD Bhāgavatam, which was described by the personality of Godhead and which contains 10 characteristics, was told with satisfaction by the father, Brahma, to his son Narada. Text 45, in succession, O king, the great sage Narada instructed SRIMAD Bhāgavatam unto the unlimitedly powerful Vyasadeva, who meditated in devotional service upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, on the bank of the river Sarasvati. Text 46, O king, your questions as to how the universe became manifested from the gigantic form of the Personality of Godhead, as well as other questions, I shall answer in detail by explanation of the 4 verses already mentioned. Library SRIMAD Bhāgavatam, Bhagavata Purana, Canto 2, The Cosmic Manifestation Chapter 10 Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Text 1, Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, in the SRIMAD Bhāgavatam there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following: the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manas, the science of God, returning home, back to Godhead, liberation, and the summum bonum. Text 2, to isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. Text 3, the elementary creation of 16 items of matter, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin and mind, is known as Sharga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called Visarga. Text 4, the right situation for the living entities is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The manas and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruit of work. Text 5, the science of God describes the incarnations of the Personality of Godhead and his different activities together with the activities of his great devotees. Text 6, the merging of the living entity, along with his conditional living tendency, with the mystic lying down of the Maha Vishnu is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable gross and subtle material bodies. Text 7, the Supreme One who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus he is the Supreme Fountainhead, the Absolute Truth. Text 8, the individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adhyadevic. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhautic person. Text 9, all 3 of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter is independent of all, and therefore he is the Supreme Shelter. Text 10, after separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Maha Vishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusa Avatara, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka. Text 11, that Supreme Person is not impersonal and therefore is distinctively a Nara, or person. Therefore the transcendental water created from the Supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down on that water, he is known as Narayana. Text 12, one should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all, exist by His mercy only, and as soon as He does not care for them, everything becomes non-existent. Text 13. The Lord, while lying on His bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of His desire to manifest varieties of living entities from Himself alone. Text 14. Just hear for me how the potency of His Lordship divides one into three, called the controlling entities, the controlled entities and the material bodies, in the manner mentioned above. Text 15. From the sky situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Maha Vishnu, sense energy, mental force and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force. Text 16. As the followers of a king follow their lord, similarly when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move, and when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities. Text 17. The living force, being agitated by the Virat Purusa, generated hunger and thirst, and when he desired to drink and eat, the mouth opened. Text 18. From the mouth the palate became manifested, and thereupon the tongue was also generated. After this all the different tastes came into existence so that the tongue can relish them. Text 19. When the Supreme desired to speak, speeches were vibrated from the mouth. Then the controlling deity fire was generated from the mouth. But when he was lying in the water, all these functions remained suspended. Text 20. Thereafter, when the Supreme Purusa desired to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration were generated, the nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air, carrying smell, also became manifested. Text 21. Thus when everything existed in darkness, the Lord desired to see Himself and all that was created. Then the eyes, the illuminating God's Son, the power of vision and the object of sight all became manifested. Text 22. By development of the desire of the great sages to know, the ears, the power of hearing, the controlling deity of hearing, and the objects of hearing became manifested. The great sages desired to hear about the self. Text 23. When there was a desire to perceive the physical characteristics of matter, such as softness, hardness, warmth, cold, lightness and heaviness, the background of sensation, the skin pores, the hairs on the body and their controlling deities, the trees, were generated. Within and outside the skin is a covering of air through which sense perception became prominent. Text 24. Thereafter when the Supreme Person desired to perform varieties of work, the two hands in their controlling strength, and Indra, the demigod in heaven, became manifested, as also the acts dependent on both the hands and the demigod. Text 25. Thereupon, because of his desiring to control movement, his legs became manifested, and from the legs the controlling deity named Vishnu was generated. By his personal supervision of this act, all varieties of human being are busily engaged in dutiful occupational sacrifice. Text 26. Thereupon, for sexual pleasure, begetting offspring and tasting heavenly nectar, the Lord developed the genitals, and thus there is the genital organ and its controlling deity, the Prajapati. The object of sexual pleasure and the controlling deity are under the control of the genitals of the Lord. Text 27. Thereafter, when he desired to evacuate the refuse of eatables, the evacuating hole, anus, and the sensory organ thereof developed along with the controlling deity Mitra. The sensory organ and the evacuating substance are both under the shelter of the controlling deity. Text 28. Thereafter, when he desired to move from one body to another, the navel and the air of departure and death were combinedly created. The navel is the shelter for both, namely death and the separating force. Text 29. When there was a desire to have food and drink, the abdomen and the intestines and also the arteries became manifested. The rivers and seas are the source of their sustenance and metabolism. Text 30. When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, determination and all desire became manifested. Text 31. The seven elements of the body, namely the thin layer on the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow and bone, are all made of earth, water and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water and air. Text 32. The sense organs are attached to the modes of material nature, and the modes of material nature are products of the false ego. The mind is subjected to all kinds of material experiences, happiness and distress, and the intelligence is the feature of the mind's deliberation. Text 33. Thus by all this, the external feature of the personality of Godhead is covered by gross forms such as those of planets, which were explained to you by me. Text 34. Therefore beyond this, gross manifestation, is a transcendental manifestation finer than the finest form. It has no beginning, no intermediate stage and no end, therefore it is beyond the limits of expression or mental speculation and is distinct from the material conception. Text 35, neither of the above forms of the Lord, as just described unto you from the material angle of vision, is accepted by the pure devotees of the Lord who know Him well. Text 36, He, the personality of Godhead, manifests Himself in a transcendental form, being the subject of His transcendental name, quality, pastimes, entourage and transcendental variegatedness. Although He is unaffected by all such activities, He appears to be so engaged. Texts 37-40, O King, know for me that all living entities are created by the Supreme Lord according to their past deeds. This includes Brahma and his sons like Daksha, the periodical heads like Vaivasvata Manu, the demigods like Indra, Kandra, and Varuna, the great sages like Bhrigu, Vyasa, and Vashishta, the inhabitants of Pitraloka and Siddhaloka, the Karanas, Gandharvas, Vidyadharas, Asuras, Yaksas, Ganneras and angels, the serpentines, the monkey-shaped Kimpurusas, the human beings, the inhabitants of Maturloka, the demons, Pukas, ghosts, spirits, lunatics and evil spirits, the good and evil stars, the goblins, the animals in the forest, the birds, the household animals, the reptiles, the mountains, the moving and standing living entities, the living entities born from embryos, from eggs, from perspiration and from seeds, and all others, whether they be in the water, land or sky, in happiness, in distress or in mixed happiness and distress. All of them, according to their past deeds, are created by the Supreme Lord. Text 41. According to the different modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, the mode of passion and the mode of darkness, there are different living creatures, who are known as demigods, human beings and hellish living entities. O King, even a particular mode of nature, being mixed with the other two, is divided into three, and thus each kind of living creature is influenced by the other modes and acquires its habits also. Text 42. He, the personality of Godhead, as the maintainer of all in the universe, appears in different incarnations after establishing the creation, and thus He reclaims all kinds of conditioned souls amongst the humans, the non-humans and the demigods. Text 43. Thereafter, at the end of the millennium, the Lord Himself in the form of Rudra, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces the clouds. Text 44. The great transcendentalists thus describe the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the pure devotees deserve to see more glorious things in transcendence, beyond these features. Text 45. There is no direct engineering by the Lord for the creation and destruction of the material world. What is described in the Vedas about His direct interference is simply to counteract the idea that material nature is the creator. Text 46. This process of creation and annihilation described in summary herein is the regulative principle during the duration of Brahma's one day. It is also the regulative principle in the creation of Maha, in which the material nature is dispersed. Text 47. O King, I shall in due course explain the measurement of time in its gross and subtle features with the specific symptoms of each, but for the present let me explain unto you the Padmakalpa. Text 48. Saunaka Rsi, after hearing all about the creation, inquired from Suta Goswami about Vidura, for Suta Goswami had previously informed him how Vidura left home, leaving aside all his relatives, who were very difficult to leave. Texts 49-50. Saunaka Rsi said, let us know, please, what topics were discussed between Vidura and Maitreya, who talked on transcendental subjects, and what was inquired by Vidura and replied by Maitreya. Also please let us know the reason for Vidura's giving up the connection of his family members, and why he again came home. Please also let us know the activities of Vidura while he was in the places of pilgrimage. Text 51. Sri Suta Goswami explained, I shall now explain to you the very subjects explained by the great sage in answer to King Parikshit's inquiries. Please hear them attentively.